Hello and welcome back. This is Mr. Munyon here with activity 27-2 on equations of circles, completing the square. So hopefully we know the general form of an equation. We're going to make sure that we know how to get that general form from some other types of equations. So in 27-2, we're going to make sure that we can find the center and radius of a circle from an equation that doesn't necessarily already look like general form here. So we're going to look at some other forms of circles and make sure we know how to convert it to general form to find the center and radius. So suppose we have an equation that represents a windmill that looks like this. This is actually the equation of a circle. Whoops, this part right here, but it doesn't look like the general form that we have up here. Notice it doesn't say x minus h squared and y minus k squared. It does have a y minus k, but we don't necessarily know what h is to help us find the x coordinate of the center of the circle. And that being said, we might, if we had to add or subtract something to be able to figure out what h is, we might not know what the radius is either. So you may have learned about completing the square in Algebra 1. Here's some algebra tile to represent completing the square. An easy way to complete a square is if it looks like it's in standard form. Basically, each variable goes in decreasing order of exponent. Then all you have to do is take what would be considered like the b term in a quadratic equation and divide by 2. So if you're confused by what I'm saying, don't worry. The examples here will help us figure this out real quick. So if I look at question 2, it says, what term do we need to add to each side of the equation to complete the square for x squared plus 6x? So notice, if this was a quadratic equation, the coefficient in front of x squared would be a, the coefficient in front of x to the first power would be b, and then the constant at the end would be c. So I can just look at the term here and know that's going to be representing b. So b would be 6, a would be 1. To complete the square, I just need to take half of the b term and square it. So half of 6 is 3. 3 squared would be 9. I could add 9 to both sides of the equation. And that would allow me to get x squared plus 6x plus 9 plus y minus 2 squared equals 16 plus 9 is 25. And now this, if I find the factors of this, I get x plus 3 and x plus 3, or x plus 3 squared. So now it would end up looking like the standard form for the equation of a circle, because if I get the same two factors, I can write that as x plus 3 squared. All right, obviously we just need to practice this a few times to make sure that we know how to complete the square, what exactly it is that we're looking for, and make sure we know how to do this. So on our problem, the eventual equation is x plus 3 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals 25. So the center would be at -3, +2, and r equals 5. Square root of 25 is 5. All right, so let's look at the next example and see if we know how to do this. So let's check our understanding. Complete the square here and see what equation that we come up with. So for this one, it looks like if I look at my x terms in standard form, the b value of the x terms would be -2. To complete the square, I just need to take half of that value and square it. So I'm going to write down the whole equation over here and make sure that we know what we're doing. So half of b squared, I need to add to both sides of the equation. So if this is the b term, half of that is -1. -1 squared is +1. I need to add 1 to both sides of the equation. And now I have x squared minus 2x plus 1 plus y squared equals 4. And the whole point of doing that was so that I could rewrite this as x minus 1, x minus 1. So the two factors are just going to be x and then whatever half of b is, minus 1 x minus 1. And it should be the exact same thing, so I could rewrite x minus 1 times x minus 1 as x minus 1 squared. So that if I needed the center, it'd be at positive 1, 0, and the radius would be square root of 4, 2 for that one. Okay, same thing on b. Let's see, half of b would be 1.5 squared. So I could take 1.5 and square it. I get 2.25. So I get x plus 1.5 equals 3.25, and from there I get x plus 1.5 squared. So x plus 1.5 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 3.25. So I didn't write out x squared plus 3x plus 2.25 because ultimately when you do that, the whole point is so that you can find the two factors. And the two factors are just going to be x plus or minus whatever half of b is. So that's why I put x plus 1.5, because half of positive 3 is 1.5. If you're not sure if you're doing these correctly, you can always multiply it back out to make sure that you do get the correct answer on there. So I do get x squared plus 1.5x plus 1.5x plus 2.25 when I multiply it back out. So the 1.5x plus 1.5x do combine to give you 3x there. All right, now that we've had a couple practice ones, let's look at a word problem here. They walk us through actually doing those same two steps and then finding the center. So here we have an equation. And it looks like we have a group of x terms and y terms that we need to complete the square of both of these. So your first step is determine if it's going to be the equation of a circle. In this case, there's an x squared and a y squared. So it does represent the equation of a circle. After that, it says complete the square on both the x and y terms. So notice here, I have a b term for the x's. I have to take half of that and square it. And I have a b term for the y values. I would have to take half of that and square it as well. So that on the example, that is what they do. Half of negative 4 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared is 4. So they added 4 to both sides. Half of 10 over here is 5. 5 squared is 25. So they did that for the second step down here. They added 25 to both sides. And notice each one of these factors they come up with is just half of the b value. So when you're done, it should be x minus 2 squared. And it should be y, half of 10 is 5, so y plus 5 squared. And over here, they did have to add 4 to get 11 and add 25 to get a total of 36 for that one. So eventually what looked like might have been the radius squared does change as well. So eventually the radius that we get is going to change based on the values that we had to complete the square. All right, so let's do that on some of these. You can go ahead and try this A, B, C, and D. Pause here, give yourself a moment, and I'll walk through these whenever we start it back up. All right, now that you've given yourself a chance, let's look at A. So the x values are already done on A, but the y values, I do need to complete the square. So I'm going to write that up here. X minus 5 squared plus y squared minus 2y equals 8. So looking at these, I need to complete the square for the y values. So this is in an equation of a circle because there is an x squared and there is a y squared. I just need to complete the square to be able to find this one. So if I look at my b term for the y's, negative 2, half of that would be negative 1, and negative 1 squared is positive 1. I need to add 1 to both sides. So I get x minus 5 squared plus y squared minus 2y plus 1 equals 9. Now that I've completed the square, the two factors should just be y minus half of b. So y minus 1 for each one of those. So x minus 5 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals 9. And so the center and radius are going to be at positive 5, 1. And the radius is going to be square root of 9, or 3. I'll leave that one up there while we try the next one. I'll just do this one in a different color. On this one, it looks like my y values are good to go, but my x's, I need to complete the square. So let's go ahead and do that. So my y values are good to go. My x's do have a squared. The y's are squared. This is the equation of a circle. And if I have them written in standard form, there's an x squared, x to the first power. This is my b term. Half of b is 2. 2 squared is 4. So I need to add 4 to both sides. So x squared plus 4x plus 4 plus y minus 4 squared equals 16. And now I can complete the square here. So I can write this as x plus half of b. So x plus 2 squared plus y minus 4 squared equals 16. So my center is going to be at negative 2, positive 4, and the radius is square root of 16, or 4. So negative 2, positive 4, and the radius equals 4 on that one. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and erase these two and then try C and D. On both of these, we do need to complete both the x and the y values to complete the square on these. So if you haven't tried these yet, but you think you can manage it, you could pause here if you think you know what you're doing. And when you start back up, I'll have the answers for you. So on question C, it is the equation of a circle. I've got an x squared and a y squared on there. Let's go ahead and write it down and see what we need to do to complete the square here. So x squared plus, whoops, that's a minus 8x. Okay, so I do see neither one of these are already in standard form. I don't have x minus h squared. So I do have an x squared and an x, so this could be my b term. I could complete the square here. And I also have a y squared and a y that I could complete the square here as well. So to complete the square for the x terms, half of b is negative 4. Negative 4 squared is 16. I would need to add 16 to both sides. And to complete the y square, I would need to take half of b is 7. 7 squared is 49, so I need to add 49 to both sides. So now I have x squared minus 8x plus 16 plus y squared minus 14y plus 49 equals, what is that, 81? Yep. Equals 81. So completing the square, I do now have factors of x minus half of b, so x minus 4 squared, plus y minus 7 half of b, so y minus 7 squared equals square root of 81, so 9. So I end up with the center being at positive 4, positive 7, and whoops, I guess that's still 81, but the radius is going to equal 9 over there. So 4, 7, and radius equals square root of 81, or 9 on there. All right, for D, looks like we do have one more to put on there. So let's check and see. For D, x squared plus 6x plus y squared plus 12y equals 4. Complete the square here and here. So half of 6 is 3. 3 squared is 9. For my y values, So half of 12 is 6. 6 squared is 36. Add that to both sides. And so 36, 45 plus 4 is 49. All right, so now that we've completed the square, the factors will be x plus 3 squared. We'll get x plus 6 squared. And we get another perfect square for the radius as well. It should end up being 7 on there. So your coordinates are going to be at -3, -6. And your radius will end up equaling 7 on that one. At this point, all completing the square problems are going to be very similar to this. You should probably be able to do the check your understanding in lesson practice here. So let's try check your understanding number 7. So pause here, try number 7, replay whenever you think you're ready to go and check your answer. Well, I thought that it was an actual problem that you need to solve, but you just needed to state why both of these people were wrong. So Bradley and Marisol both don't know what they're doing. To complete this square, the x values are done already. You know, you already have x minus h, so h would be a -3. But for k, to find the y coordinate, you need to complete the square. You need to take half of this b value here and square it. So 9 squared is 81, is how much you're supposed to add to both sides. So Bradley is wrong because that's not 81, and Marisol is wrong. So both of them are incorrect because you need to add 81 to complete the square. For question 8, though, you should be able to complete this square here. Writing the equation in standard form of circle, it says what is the next step? Even though this looks like it might be a little off, if you just move the 9 over here, that will already have factors of x plus 3 and x plus 3, so x plus 3 squared. I guess you could just factor the y terms to get x plus 3 and x plus 3. And then what is the radius of the circle? We didn't need to add or subtract anything, so the radius will be square root of 25, or r equals 5 on that one. Yeah, because that one's already ready to go. Here, half of 6 is 3, 3 squared is 9, and that's already there for you, so you don't need to do anything else on that one. All right, lesson practice. I'm going to do one from each section here right now, and then you can pause, and then I'll put the answers up for you. So let's try one from 9. It says, determine if the equation represents a circle. If so, determine the coordinates for the center. So first one, I have an x squared and a y squared. No higher powers, and there is not, an x to the first power only or something. So this is going to be the equation of a circle. It looks like there's only one x term, so my general form is just going to have x minus 0 squared, or x squared. But there is an extra y term, so I do need to complete that square to find k. So it's already written as y squared minus 6y. Half of -6 is -3. -3 squared is 9. You do need to add 9 to both sides of the equation on this one. And you get x squared plus y squared minus 6y plus 9 equals 16 plus 9 is 25. Find your factors. So you get x squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 25. So then the center of the circle would be at 0, positive 3. It doesn't ask for the radius, but the radius would be 5 on this one, square root of 25. All right. You guys, when I get done with question 10a, then I'll have the answers for B and C as well. So for 10a, it says determine the center of the circle. Looks like x's are ready to go. Y's, I need to complete the square. So I do need to add half of b squared to each side. So half of b is -4. -4 squared is 16. I do need to add 16 to both sides. So I end up getting x minus 6 squared plus y squared minus 8y plus 16 equals 0 plus 16, so 16. X minus 6 squared plus y minus 4. Remember, the factors are just going to be y minus half of b. In this case is 4, so y minus 4 equals 16. So the center will be a positive 6, positive 4. And the radius on this one would be square root of 16, so 4 on that one. All right, pause here and see if you can do 9b and c, 10b and c, and I'll put the answers up here in just a second. All right, so here we have the answers for 9b and c. I can tell here on 9b this is not the equation of a circle because there's not an x squared term anywhere in the equation, so that's not the equation of a circle. For 9c, I have right here, to complete the square here, half of b is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is positive 1, so I did need to add 1 to both sides. To complete the square for y's, I needed to take half of b, 5. 5 squared is 25, so I needed to add 26 total to each side. But the center would then be at positive 1 and negative 5 for that one. For 10b and c, I put 10b over here. And you'll notice there that to complete the square for x, I had to add 100. To complete the square for y, I had to add 36. So 100 and 36 and the original 8 all added together to give me 144. So then that means that after I find the center at positive 10, positive 6, the radius is square root of 144, or 12. Same thing for 10c. I did need to complete the square on both of these. So half of b was 7. 7 squared was 49. So I needed to add 49 to both sides. To complete the square for y, I needed to add 1 to both sides. So 49 plus 1 plus 14 gives me 50 plus 14 is 64. So then half of b is 7, so x plus 7 squared, y plus 1 squared equals 64. The center is at negative 7, negative 1. The radius is square root of 64, or 8. I also went ahead and put the answer down for 11. You can check that. When you finish, or you'll notice there is an x squared, and what you can do is, if you don't know what to do with these constants to complete the square, just get rid of them. Add 9 to both sides, subtract 5. You end up getting 4 on the other side if you add 9 and then subtract 5. All right, and then you can just complete the square. For your x's, you'd have to add 4 to both sides, so you get 8 over here, which is why the radius ends up being square root of 8. And the y is done. You don't have to do anything. There's no y to the first power. You don't have to complete the square. It's just y minus 0 squared, or y squared. So that one's already done right there. All right, well, hopefully you feel comfortable with this. If not, there is a good Khan Academy lesson on equations of circles and completing the square that you can get some more practice. Otherwise, just do the lesson 20 or the activity 27 practice on the next page, because it's the same thing. Again, completing the square is done the same way. Take care till next time.